When I joined Performing Lines, I brought this entire community of people with me who had never really expressed any interest in the arts or in the performing arts.
Having Zainab and our team immediately connected us to a whole community that we would never have been able to connect to so quickly. It was like a shortcut. It really does change how you can authentically be in a space. The first thing that we did as an organisation in trying to work with more culturally diverse artists was actually to diversify our team. That was a really key strategy and one that we employed 3 years ago. And that was at a time when the previous senior producer and I realised that we were working with artists who generally looked the same and came from similar backgrounds, similar training, and felt a bit at a loss of how we were actually going to find other artists who we could potentially work with. And then we essentially came back to our strength, which is that we know how to produce.
When my position, which was for a producer, when it was advertised, because it said a CALD producer, I did apply. I wasn't from an arts background. I didn't really know what a producer did. And when I looked at the job description, it looked like things that I felt like I could do and was qualified to do. But if the position had just been a producer, I would not have applied.
We really specifically noted in our job advertisement that culturally diverse applicants would be prioritised. But we also had to go through other mechanisms. We tried to partner with bigger organisations who were already working in that area, such as the Office of Multicultural Interests, and got them to share our job advertisement. So we did have to think differently how we were going to reach an audience of potential applicants who actually may not be thinking about working in the arts because perhaps they never thought that was an option for them. We understood that that would take more mentoring to bring someone like that onto our team, and we undertook that we were going to do that.
And I think that was a lot of foresight, and that was very sincere intentionality that then meant that when I was hired, there was no pressure on me to produce diverse shows. It was all around how can Zainab be upskilled to be the best producer that she can be and produce whatever works she wants to produce. Layla Majnun really began as something very small. And the shows that I was seeing and the shows that I were making, I liked and were interesting, but there was a lack. And I could feel that lack, and it really was, okay, who are the artists then around here who I can work with to tell stories that I really care about and tell stories that do offer inroads between communities. I met Ustad Feraidoon Mojadedi, who's the writer and performer of Layla Majnun, at a conference and a retreat years ago. And a lot of the talk at the conference really was about how, as Muslims, we need to use the arts as a way to bring people together and to fight xenophobia and to fight Islamophobia and all of this rhetoric of hate. And that really was the catalyst for the idea.
The story of Layla and Majnun is one of the most widely known and celebrated stories across the Muslim world. From Iran to Uzbekistan and from Morocco to Malaysia, it is on the tongue of every child and grandparent. The story has been shared and loved and retold countless times through paintings, miniatures, films, and poems. It is the story of a young man named Qais who falls in love with Layla. His love for her grows so intense that he becomes Majnun, a madman. Later, he is known in the dictionaries of the world as a symbol of love.
My name is Feraidoon Mojadedi. I was born and raised in Afghanistan and then moved to America. Since childhood, I was a lover of poetry, especially Rumi. I've been blessed to write this script in a way that it has never been done before. I took Nizami's original Layla Majnun poem and I added poetry and stories from the Masnavi of Rumi, from Saadi's Gulistan and Bustan, from Attar Nishapuri, from all these great poets of the past, and even some of the modern poets who wrote the story of Layla Majnun, as flesh into this bone structure. And in this way, no one has ever done this story in this format, in English, in Farsi, in Arabic, in any languages.
When we start working with the artists, most of these artists have engineering jobs and architecture jobs and are doctors, and they have these other whole full 9-to-5 lives. And so to work around that, we had to work a lot of evenings and weekends. And for us at Performing Lines, it was also restructuring how we work traditionally in a theater to accommodate for some of those needs, and the cultural specificities of like making a show of this capacity. And then what has happened out of that cross-cultural collaboration really is so beautiful, because there's learning happening on both sides. There's challenges in what people know and don't know. There's a questioning of assumptions that are made. And then there's a way forward that we have created to go together, understanding each and everyone's constraints and also the promise that they hold, and this being equal giving and equal receiving. And I think that is the heart of Layla Majnun.
Essentially, our whole team was doing something for the first time that we'd never done before, and that was that we were selling a show, but we were also selling a show to an audience who would have no idea what we did and who may not even normally feel welcome in a theatre. So that just meant we had to think differently about what we were doing.
What's really exciting about the show is to work with such a respected authority as Feraidoon and find a way to empower him and our diverse audiovisual and music teams to tell a story that honours their tradition and their histories and opens the doors of that culture to a broad contemporary West Australian and Australian audience.
For Layla Majnun, I just really wanted to make sure that this wasn't a tokenistic show, that this wasn't a show we were putting on for white audiences to come and get some culture, that it actually accurately represented the community that this story is from. So we really brought people into these focus groups and asked them about their behavior in going to shows. Like, do they go to performing arts shows? Do they go to the theater? Do they go to music shows? What they do before, what do they do after? Ticket prices? Do they go in groups? Do they go with their parents? Do they go with their kids? Do they like entertainment before and after the show? Like, it just really was a really rich conversation, and just understanding how these people engage with the arts, and if they do at all, and are they even interested, without making any assumptions about anything. After our focus groups, we really sat down with all of the information that we had gotten, particularly the marketing information, to make sure that we weren't wasting our energies and our time on doing things that didn't really work. Our flyers and our postcards, on the backs of them, had images of the audience, so that audiences could pick them up and see themselves. You're like, oh, this is a show that I can go to. And then also, I really wanted to make sure with Layla Majnun that the venue was accessible to people. And so there is a prayer room, the bar is closed, there's halal food, the foyer has been totally transformed. I also wanted to make sure that all of the staff at the venue and the front of house and the ushers also felt comfortable with a new audience that they may not have engaged with before. And so I had a cultural sensitivity training before we started rehearsals to make sure that we actually were equipping the people who are in this venue to be able to troubleshoot and deal with some situations that they may not know about. I really thought 5, 10 from front of house staff or someone would come, but Perth Theatre Trust opened it up to everyone, and 50 people were there. Diversifying your audience is a pretty big step, and you got to start small. And you have to start with something that you can actually accomplish, which a lot of organizations, I don't think, necessarily give as much weight to, which is the ripple effects of what it means to diversify your core staff, the staff that actually is in the decision-making position. And this extends all the way to into your boardrooms as well. I don't even think organizations can really authentically and deeply engage with different communities and begin to change the conversation around what is the work we're making and who's coming to see that work until their staff looks different.
It makes you think more. It makes you think differently because you have somebody with potentially a different perspective sitting right next to you. And so you're immediately having to be more broad in the way you think. And I think that that's No matter what kind of diversity you have in the team, that's what you want. We would absolutely continue to nurture culturally diverse producers. It is a focus of us to help mentor producers for this sector, and it is, for me, a priority that we have more people in higher positions that are culturally diverse, because it does change the way people will operate.
When they come in, what is the support that you are offering? And it has to look like many different things. And a main part of that support is really that intergenerational mentorship, which is so vital in our industry. And it requires a lot of heart and a lot of letting go from people in leadership positions. But it also requires a lot of just like willingness to learn and be challenged and to grow from the people who are coming into the space, so that you're meeting halfway. Otherwise, it doesn't work.